Chains of arrogance. The great hall of the Myriadian citadel gleamed with polished obsidian floors that reflected the amber light of twin artificial suns. Commander Vestra Corian strode confidently across the chamber, the purple glow from her exosuit's power conduits casting eerie shadows as she moved. Her chrome-silver hair was pulled back in a tight ceremonial braid, highlighting the sharp angles of her violet-tinted face and the bioluminescent markings that distinguished members of the Myriadian elite. "So this is Earth's greatest diplomat," she called out, her voice amplified by her suit's systems. "The famous Julian Reeves who negotiated peace with the Centaurian hegemony?" The human stood calmly at the center of the hall, dressed in simple gray diplomatic attire that seemed deliberately understated compared to the ornate surroundings. His dark skin contrasted with the silver streaks in his close-cropped hair, and his posture betrayed nothing of the tension that filled the room. "Commander Corian," Julian replied with a slight bow. "I came at your government's invitation to discuss the border dispute in the Proxima system. I wasn't aware that Myriadian diplomatic protocol included combat trials." A ripple of amusement passed through the assembled Myriadian officials and nobility who observed from elevated platforms around the hall. Vestra's lips curled into a predatory smile. "The Proxima system has been Myriadian territory for 3 generations. If humans wish to establish outposts within our sovereign space, you must first prove worthy of our consideration." She gestured to the ceremonial arena markings that had been illuminated on the floor. "Our traditions are clear. Foreign emissaries must demonstrate their strength before negotiations can proceed." Julian sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I was informed of no such requirement in our preliminary communications." "An oversight," Vestra said dismissively. "But surely Earth wouldn't send a diplomat unprepared for all contingencies?" The High Chancellor of the Myriadian Empire, Darius Zoreth, leaned forward from his position at the head of the assembly. "Commander Corian speaks truthfully about our traditions, Diplomat Reeves. However," he cast a pointed look at Vestra, "these trials are typically ceremonial in nature. Nothing builds mutual respect like testing each other's mettle, Chancellor," Vestra replied, activating her exosuit's combat systems. The purple glow intensified as articulated armor plates shifted into offensive configuration, and a curved energy blade materialized from her right gauntlet. Julian shook his head slightly. "I came as a diplomat, not a warrior." "Is there a difference?" Vestra challenged. "On Myriad, we believe true diplomacy comes from strength. If Earth cannot demonstrate strength, perhaps you should withdraw your claims to Proxima entirely." The human delegation seated at the periphery of the hall shifted uncomfortably. Admiral Patel, head of the Earth delegation, stood to protest, but Julian raised a hand to quiet her. "Very well," Julian said, his voice taking on a new resonance that silenced the hall. "If tradition demands it, I will comply." Vestra smiled triumphantly as Julian removed his formal jacket, revealing a simple black undertunic. When he reached into a pocket and withdrew what appeared to be a linked chain of dark metal segments, her smile transformed into incredulous laughter. "A chain?" she asked, the exosuit's vocal amplifiers making her mockery echo throughout the chamber. "You face Myriadian battle technology that has conquered 3-star systems, and you bring primitive links of metal?" Julian didn't respond immediately. He simply let the chain hang from his right hand, the strange dark metal catching the light in unexpected ways. The material seemed to absorb more light than it reflected. "This weapon has been in my family for 7 generations, he said quietly. "The metal was forged from a meteorite that fell to Earth centuries ago. I practice with it daily as meditation." "How quaint," Vestra said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The Myriadian Empire has evolved beyond such primitive tools. Our exosuits enhance strength, speed, and reaction time tenfold. That chain will never touch me." The High Chancellor raised his ceremonial staff. "The trial will proceed according to tradition. Combat ends at first blood or yield. Begin." Vestra wasted no time. Her exosuit hummed with energy as she launched forward with inhuman speed, energy blade aimed directly at Julian's chest. The human diplomat pivoted smoothly, the chain whipping out in a defensive arc that caught the audience by surprise. The dark metal links wrapped momentarily around Vestra's blade before she pulled away. "Interesting reflexes for a diplomat," she commented, circling him cautiously now. "Diplomacy requires many skills," Julian replied, the chain flowing around his body in hypnotic patterns. "Patience. Observation. Understanding your opponent's strengths and weaknesses." Vestra attacked again, this time with a complex series of strikes designed to overwhelm any defense. Julian's chain became a blur as he deflected each attack, its movement seeming to defy physics in the way it intercepted her blade. "Impossible," Vestra hissed as she intensified her assault. "That primitive weapon should have been severed by my energy blade." Julian continued his defensive pattern, never directly attacking. "The meteorite metal has unusual properties. Your energy weapon can't disrupt its molecular structure." The Myriadian commander's frustration mounted with each failed attack. Her exosuit's power output increased, purple energy crackling around her as she pushed her systems beyond standard limits. "Fight back, coward." Julian finally obliged. The chain suddenly changed direction, wrapping around her blade arm. Before Vestra could react, he pulled sharply, disrupting her balance. As she stumbled, the chain struck with precision, not at her body, but at specific nodes on her exosuit. A crackling sound echoed through the hall as hairline fractures appeared across her armor's primary power coupling. The purple glow flickered momentarily. "What did you?" Vestra didn't finish her question as Julian's chain struck again, this time targeting a secondary node at her shoulder joint. The connection between her energy blade and main power system faltered, causing the weapon to sputter. With growing horror, Vestra realized what was happening. "You know the design of our exosuits?" "I studied everything available about Myriadian technology before coming here," Julian replied, his chain continuing its precise attack pattern. "Every system has vulnerabilities. Your exosuit's power distribution network has 7 critical junctions. Hit them in the correct sequence." The chain struck a third time, wrapping around her torso before delivering a precise impact to a junction at her lower back. The purple glow died completely in her left arm. A fourth strike targeted her right knee actuator, forcing her to stumble. Within 60 seconds of Julian's first offensive move, Commander Vestra Corian's advanced battle exosuit lay in partial shutdown, its systems compromised, its wearer kneeling before the human diplomat. The silence in the great hall was absolute. Julian stood over her, chain hanging loosely from his hand. "The 7th generation of my family to carry this weapon was my grandmother. She taught me that true strength lies not in technological superiority, but in understanding, both of your opponent and yourself." He extended his hand to help her up. "The meteorite metal absorbs energy. The more power you directed at it, the more it strengthened. Your greatest strength became your weakness." Chancellor Zoratha's voice broke the silence. "The trial is concluded. Diplomat Reeves has demonstrated both strength and wisdom. The negotiations for Proxima will proceed." Vestra stared at Julian's outstretched hand, humiliation burning in her chest. The human had defeated her most advanced combat technology with what appeared to be primitive chains, but was in reality a precisely applied understanding of Myriadian weaknesses. "This isn't over," she whispered as she reluctantly took his hand to rise. "No," Julian agreed quietly. "I suspect it's just beginning." In the council chambers following the combat trial, Vestra faced the cold disapproval of the Myriadian leadership. "You've embarrassed the Empire," Chancellor Zorath stated, his ancient face creased with displeasure. "An advanced Myriadian warrior defeated by a human with a chain? I underestimated him," Vestra admitted bitterly. "It won't happen again." "Indeed it won't," replied Council Elder Lyra Nix, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with agitation. "Because you've just compromised our entire negotiating position. The humans now know our exosuits can be disabled with targeted strikes. Not primitive strikes, Vestra corrected reflexively. Precisely applied. There's a difference. The council chamber fell silent, 7 pairs of eyes narrowing at her apparent defense of human tactics. Chancellor Zorith studied her for a long moment. The human has requested your presence at the negotiations. He claims your combat experience provides valuable perspective. Vestra's spine stiffened. And you agreed? We did, Zorith confirmed. Learn what you can about their true intentions regarding Proxima. Use whatever means necessary to secure our interests. As Vestra left the council chamber, she couldn't shake the memory of Julian Reeves standing over her, offering his hand not in triumph, but in respect. Something had shifted between them in that moment, something neither had anticipated when she had challenged him. Something that felt unsettlingly like understanding. Bonds forged in battle. The Myriadian diplomatic chamber was a stark contrast to the combat arena where Julian and Vestra had met days earlier. Instead of obsidian floors and dramatic lighting, this room featured a circular table carved from luminous crystal that changed colors to reflect the emotional tenor of discussions. Currently, it glowed a tense orange. Vestra sat rigidly in her formal attire, a high-collared uniform in the deep indigo of the Myriadian command structure, though notably without her exosuit. Across from her, Julian Reeves reviewed holographic projections of the disputed Proxima system, his chain weapon coiled inconspicuously at his belt. The settlements on Proxima 4 have been established for 15 Earth years, Julian explained, pointing to several nodes on the projection. Our presence predates the Empire's territorial claim by nearly a decade. Those settlements were established without permission while we were engaged in the Orion conflict, Vestra countered. Taking advantage of diverted attention doesn't constitute legitimate claim. The crystal table shifted toward red. Chancellor Zorith raised a conciliatory hand. Perhaps we can discuss resource-sharing agreements rather than exclusive territorial rights, he suggested, eyes darting between the human delegation and his own representatives. Before Julian could respond, an urgent tone sounded. A Myriadian officer rushed into the chamber, bowing hastily. Forgive the interruption, Chancellor. We've received an emergency transmission from Helios Outpost. They're under attack. The table pulsed crimson as Vestra stood abruptly. Helios? That's nowhere near disputed territory, it's deep in Myriadian space. The officer activated a holographic display. Unknown vessels. Dozens of them. They've already disabled our orbital defenses. The projection showed crystalline-structured ships, angular and black, methodically targeting the outpost's key infrastructure while avoiding population centers. Those aren't Earth vessels, Julian said immediately, examining the projection. The design architecture is completely unfamiliar. Vestra shot him a suspicious glance. Convenient timing for an unknown attack during delicate negotiations. Julian met her gaze steadily. If Earth wanted to pressure you, we wouldn't attack an outpost so far from the disputed zone. This is something else entirely. Chancellor Zorith turned to his military officer. Scramble the defense fleet. I want ships at Helios within the hour. That will be too late, Vestra said grimly. Helios has minimal planetary defenses. It's a scientific outpost, not a military installation. Julian stepped closer to the projection, studying the attack pattern. They're targeting power generation and communication specifically. This isn't random destruction, it's systematic neutralization. He turned to Admiral Patel of the Earth delegation. Admiral, how far is the Earth vessel Hyperion from this sector? The Admiral consulted her tactical display. The Hyperion is approximately 40 minutes at maximum drive from Helios Outpost, sir. Vestra's eyes narrowed. You have an Earth warship that close to our territory? The Hyperion is an exploration vessel with defensive capabilities, Admiral Patel corrected. It was mapping the Amal Nebula as part of our scientific initiatives. Julian nodded. And it could reach Helios before Myriadian reinforcements. A tense silence fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. Earth could render aid faster than the Myriadians could protect their own outpost, but accepting such help would be a profound acknowledgement of vulnerability. Chancellor Zorith finally spoke. We cannot risk Helios' outpost for the sake of Myriadian pride. He turned to Julian. Your assistance would be appreciated. Julian nodded, then looked to Vestra. Commander Corian's tactical expertise would be invaluable. I request her presence aboard the Hyperion when we respond. Vestra's luminescent markings flashed with surprise. You want me on an Earth vessel? I want the best Myriadian tactical mind available when facing an unknown enemy, Julian replied. Unless you'd prefer to wait for your own fleet while Helios burns? 20 minutes later, the Earth vessel Hyperion dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Helios outpost. From the command deck, Vestra observed the unfolding attack with professional assessment. The black crystalline ships had formed a precise geometric pattern around the outpost's main research facility. They're maintaining perfect spacing, she noted, almost artificially precise. Julian stood beside her, his chain weapon now unwrapped and held loosely in his hand. No variation in formation despite atmospheric conditions. Like they're following programming rather than tactical instinct. Automated? Vestra suggested. Or a hive mind, Julian added. Either way, their behavior lacks the adaptability of independent decision-makers. Captain Eliana Torres of the Hyperion approached. We're in weapons range, Diplomat Reeves. Orders? Julian glanced at Vestra. Commander Corian has more combat experience than I do. This is her people's outpost. Vestra hesitated only briefly before assuming the tactical role. Those ships are targeting specific infrastructure nodes. See how that larger vessel hangs back? It's coordinating the others. She pointed to a slightly different ship at the formation center. Take out that command vessel, and the others might lose coordination. Conventional targeting may alert them to adjust their formation, Julian observed. But what if we apply the same principle I used in our combat trial? Redirect force rather than applying it directly. A slow smile spread across Vestra's face. Momentum against strength. She turned to Captain Torres. Do you have unarmed probe pods? Yes, several dozen scientific probes. And tractor beam technology? Torres nodded. Advanced gravitational manipulation fields. Launch probes toward their outer formation, Vestra instructed. When they adjust to intercept, use tractor beams to alter the probe's trajectories at the last moment. Julian continued her thought. They'll fire on what they expect to be incoming projectiles. And hit each other instead, Vestra finished. The strategy worked brilliantly. The black ships, tracking the probes with mathematical precision, fired energy weapons that struck their companions when the probes suddenly veered off course. The formation broke apart in confusion. Now target their command vessel, Vestra ordered. The Hyperion's main cannons fired, not energy beams but physical projectiles, tungsten rods accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. The command ship, momentarily exposed, took a direct hit. Immediately, the remaining vessels began moving erratically, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Just as we thought, Julian said. Without central coordination. They're vulnerable, Vestra completed his sentence again, their minds working in surprising synchronicity. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. With the command ship disabled, the remaining vessels fell quickly to the Hyperion's weapons. When the last enemy ship was neutralized, Vestra turned to Julian with newfound respect. Your ship uses physical projectiles rather than energy weapons, she observed. That's considered primitive by Myriadian standards. Julian smiled. Sometimes the old ways remain effective precisely because they're unexpected. Like chain weapons against exosuits? Exactly. Captain Torres interrupted their moment. We've captured one intact vessel. Initial scans show no biological signatures aboard, just machinery. Vestra and Julian exchanged glances before she spoke. Prepare a boarding party. I want to know who these attackers are. The captured ship's interior was eerily sterile, no crew quarters, no life support systems, just machinery and crystalline technology. At what appeared to be the bridge, they found a single humanoid figure seated in a control chair. As they approached, it turned, revealing not an organic being but a robot with a featureless faceplate. Identify yourself, Vestra demanded, weapon raised. The robot tilted its head. When it spoke, its voice was flat, synthetic. This unit serves the Nexus Collective. You have interfered with resource acquisition protocol. The Nexus Collective? Julian asked. What is that? The Collective requires no explanation. The Collective requires isotope materials from this outpost. Why not establish diplomatic relations? Julian pressed. Request trading rights? Inefficient. Acquisition through direct action is optimal. Vestra stepped forward. You attacked a Myriadian outpost. That was your mistake. Negative. Mistake was underestimating defensive capabilities. Adaptation will occur. The Collective will return with sufficient force. Is that a threat? Vestra asked coldly. A certainty. This unit's destruction is imminent. Data has already been transmitted.
The Collective now knows of Myriadian and human cooperation. Analysis suggests this combination presents greater threat than anticipated. Before either could respond, the robot's faceplate began to glow red. Self-destruct sequence initiated, it announced. Out now. Julian shouted, grabbing Vestra's arm and pulling her toward the exit. They barely escaped before the vessel erupted in flames.
Back on the Hyperion's bridge, they watched grimly as the other captured enemy ships simultaneously self-destructed. They destroyed themselves to prevent us from studying their technology, Vestra observed. Not before sending everything they learned about us to this Collective, Julian added. They seemed particularly concerned about humans and Myriadians working together. Vestra nodded slowly. Perhaps our alliance is more important than either of our governments realized. 2 days later, in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Myriadian Empire, Chancellor Zoreth addressed a packed chamber of officials, military officers, and Earth representatives. The attack on Helios Outpost represents a threat unlike any we have faced, he declared. This Nexus Collective targets our resources without provocation or communication. Our intelligence indicates they are mobilizing a larger fleet that threatens both Myriadian and Earth territories. Julian Reeve stood beside Vestra at the center of the assembly. The Collective adapts to each encounter, he explained. They've already developed countermeasures for standard Myriadian energy weapons, and next time they'll have answers for Earth's kinetic weapons too. Only together do we stand a chance, Vestra added, surprise rippling through the assembly at her apparent alliance with the human. Not just militarily but philosophically. The Collective is a singular entity, uniform and unchanging except to overcome specific obstacles. Our strength lies in diversity, in the combination of different perspectives and approaches. She moved closer to Julian, their shoulders nearly touching. Which is why I've made a decision that I believe will secure our alliance and our future. The assembly waited, tension building. In accordance with ancient Myriadian tradition, I have accepted a formal bond with diplomat Julian Reeves of Earth, Vestra announced. A bond of both diplomatic and personal nature. The hall erupted in astonished exclamations. General Thorin, Vestra's superior officer, looked thunderstruck. This is outrageous. The Myriadian bloodline cannot be. The Myriadian bloodline has always adapted to ensure survival, Vestra cut him off. My ancestors forged marriages with former enemies to secure peace. I do the same now with the full authority of my position. Julian stepped forward. My government has recognized this union and elevated it to the status of a binding treaty component. Any rejection would constitute a breach of diplomatic protocol. It was a masterful move. By invoking ancient tradition and modern diplomacy simultaneously, they had created a situation where rejecting their union would require rejecting the alliance itself, something increasingly difficult to justify with the collective threat looming. Chancellor Zorith studied them for a long moment before nodding slowly. The Council recognizes this bond and the alliance it represents. He raised his ceremonial staff. From this day forward, Myriadian and Earth forces stand united against the Nexus Collective. As the assembly dissolved into discussion, Vestra turned to Julian. When you challenged me with that chain weapon, I never imagined we would end up fighting side by side. Julian smiled, the meteorite metal chain glinting at his belt. The day is full of surprises, Commander Corian. And I suspect there are more to come. Vestra's luminescent markings pulsed with a new color, not the purple of aggression or the blue of formality, but a warm gold that few Myriadians ever displayed in public. Indeed, Diplomat Reeves. Indeed. Far beyond Myriadian space, in the cold void between star systems, black crystalline ships gathered by the hundreds, their perfect formation shifting and adapting as new data was processed. At their center, a massive command vessel pulsed with information. The Nexus Collective had encountered something unexpected, two different species, with different technologies and philosophies, working in harmonious coordination. This required analysis. This required adaptation. This required a response. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.